Thanks a lot, Peter and Jeremy. I think the guys are spot on in terms of the support of the DFIs in the private equity sector. But I think there's two more concepts that is important to understand. The first one is the perception of Africa as a risk. You know, the investors, they look at Africa as with a very high perception of risk. So the perception of risk is like very, very high, like to the top. But the real risk is not that, it's actually to our level. So to have an investor that can do the arbitrage and understand and be educated to understanding the difference between the perception to the reality, it is very difficult. Only DFIs can do that because they have a ton of people, economists, they understand, they have been living here and they have invested for many years. The issue here is also another one, which is very, very relevant for us to attract private capital, which is that the money, the real money, is in the US, and it's in the European, and a lot of big government funds, right? Pension funds. Those people which are in the US, which represent 80% of the money, 80% of the money is held by 20% of investors. The people, they can only write 100 million euro checks, 200 million euro checks. Less than that, they cannot do it. It is not worth it for them. So then what happened to people like us, like Peter and myself, which are managing much smaller funds, which is focusing into exactly what Africa needs, which is the SME sector, okay? These 11,000 companies that Stefan was talking about, that's where we invest. You know, the large funds, which are the largest funds in Europe and the US, those guys are the ones that attract the large ticket monies. We cannot do that because we're too small for them. And these two concepts are very relevant. And the third one, sorry, that I can introduce for private equity is, I don't think any of the risks or challenges that Stefan has put on the board will refrain us to invest. In fact, for us, those are opportunities, complexity, you know, access to talent, things like this. The biggest challenge that we're facing is liquidity events. Liquidity events are the biggest challenger on the African context. And that's driven mainly because in the past have never been secondary transactions in private equity, where in US and Europe, 50% of the exits are done to other funds, to larger funds, to funds that take the company to the next level. And I think that was lacking, which I think we're starting to see the light of that. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to come to you, Richard, in just a moment about that perception gap problem. But let me challenge you on something you said, Albert. Capital. Pension funds across Africa are sitting on a ton of money, a lot of them. Not all of them are represented here, but more often than not, they're prevented from getting that money to be invested across the continent. And that's a persistent issue that we've been struggling with for years. So why aren't we leveraging the capital that's available here? What's the problem with that?
You're totally right. You're absolutely right. But one of the biggest pockets that is coming through in this area that Peter was talking about is going to be the pension fund money from African countries. And the reason because of that is because they have in the status, in the bylaws, they cannot invest outside. And that will help. But the issue that they have, many of those guys, is that the regulation issues, central bank issues. The guys cannot invest outside. Look, you talk to a pension fund in Morocco, in Tunisia, or just get along Algeria, and many of the other African countries, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to get the approval by the central bank to invest outside. Let's not talk about Luxembourg or Mauritius or any other place. It's going to be a nightmare for them. So for them, it's too risky and too complex to do so. So unless there is a driven of change of regulation, regulatory approval by central banks, by all of these institutions, it will be very difficult for us to be able to get that access. But I have to say that I see the light on that. I can see now people start talking to us of those types of pension funds.
Is it working?
Sorry, I'll just add to the point on pension funds. About $380 billion in pension funds in Africa, and that includes South Africa. And frankly, some countries have already made a lot of effort on that, including South Africa, Nigeria, Namibia, and Kenya. And we are right in the middle of that in terms of trying to essentially, how do we bypass the pension fund consultants in particular, who have I mean, I don't know who is a pension fund consultant here, but essentially they have a key to the safe. So some money has already gone into private equity, but there's a lot more to go. So the question is, you know, everybody knows that the needs of Africa is in infrastructure, and in most developed markets, what finances infrastructure is exactly that, long-term pension funds. So this is absolutely indispensable, I think, for the future to get more funds. At the end of the day, it's about Africa assets, investing in Africa.
We've got to match the capital to essentially the investment opportunity available. Richard, over to you. So you're the one here who's built a business pretty much from scratch. Guys like Jeremy will show up and say, well, the business looks interesting, but how do you address that gap between the perception of risk and the actual risk? Is it as big a gap as we're talking about?
Thank you, Rama. As you were saying, yes, at the beginning, so you have a very mixed panel. So just to make me be sure that I will make my mind very clear, if you allow me to continue to express myself in French.
By all means, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. Now the gap is there, and the perception we have on the... I said it in French, so... merci beaucoup. C'est vrai que pour prendre un peu l'exemple du groupe Activa que j'ai fondé il y a 20 ans, après avoir passé 18 ans dans une grande compagnie d'assurance internationale, il était important pour nous lorsque nous avons pris la décision stratégique de nous développer à l'international, de nous faire accompagner d'un certain nombre de partenaires financiers, ce qui était très important. Mais lorsque vous avez l'ambition de vous faire accompagner d'un partenaire financier, vous devez absolument vous assurer que votre vision est vraiment partagée par votre partenaire et que le cycle d'exploitation de votre secteur d'activité est bien compris. Parce que l'investisseur qui investit dans un métier de service à cycle court n'est pas forcément le même, c'est pas le même fonds qu'ils investissent dans un cycle industriel ou dans un cycle d'assurance. Donc nous avons été approchés par plusieurs contacts avec lesquels nous avons exposé quelle était exactement notre vision, quel était notre projet. Et à la fin de la journée, nous avons eu à tirer la conclusion que la structure de partenariat financier qui était le plus compatible avec notre projet était plus des DFI que des private equity purs. Mais pour des raisons que je comprends, parce que la nature des fonds collectés par les private equity courts, évidemment, souvent c'est sur le court terme. Donc, il faut qu'ils aient une porte de sortie au bout de 4 ou 5 ans, et en plus avec des taux de rentabilité qu'ils ont eux-mêmes promises à ceux qui ont mis les fonds. Ça, nous le comprenons. Mais dans notre métier d'assurance, bien que les DFI ne soient pas totalement philanthropes, mais en général, ils sont là pour une période plus longue et c'est un véritable partenariat industriel, pas seulement financier, parce que les DFI ont en même temps le souci de s'intéresser au développement donc économique des pays, la responsabilité sociétale, également le respect de l'environnement, et surtout un groupe comme le nôtre, avec le taux de pénétration, dont tout à l'heure, dont Stéphano donnait le taux de pénétration des private equity en Afrique, mais pour l'assurance, c'est pareil, le taux de pénétration de l'assurance sur le continent, c'est 1%. Évidemment, les pessimistes vont dire que ça ne devrait susciter aucun intérêt, mais les optimistes le voient comme un potentiel énorme. Et nous faisons partie de cela, ce qui fait que, donc aujourd'hui, le secteur de l'assurance en Afrique est très attractif. Et nous avons donc préféré avoir un partenariat avec les DFI. C'est ainsi que depuis 5 ans, nous avons accueilli donc AFC dans notre capitale. Et depuis l'année dernière, nous avons accueilli également Proparco, qui nous accompagne comme un projet industriel. Et ce qui est important, c'est le partage de la vision, parce que nous prenons des risques importants. Et nous devons absolument veiller à ce que notre vision soit partagée par nos partenaires. Par exemple, nous partons de l'idée que, en tant que compagnie africaine, nous devons travailler exactement sur les mêmes standards internationaux que notre compétiteur. L'assurance, c'est le métier sur l'Afrique, c'est un des métiers les plus compétitifs. Nous sommes sur un marché, 25 compagnies d'assurance à vendre le même produit à la même personne. Donc c'est vraiment très compétitif. Et nous avions la volonté non seulement d'explorer des marchés assez neufs, nouveaux, mais également de développer des secteurs d'activité comme l'assurance agricole, comme la micro-assurance pour les consommateurs d'or à faible revenu, où le risque est réel. Et nous devons avoir l'assurance que notre partenaire partage cette vision sur la durée. Donc c'est pour ça que le gap de la perception de risque, c'est important. Et nous devons, dès le début, être sûrs que notre partenaire partage cette vision.
Before I open up the panel to questions from the floor, there's something I'd like to address, because at the last 24 hours, we've gone to different discussions, and the accusation, the feeling I get, is that private equity is sometimes treated as the villain of the theatre, right? You guys are not giving us capital, coming in demanding insane internal rates of return. Yes, man.
We were the good guys.
No, unfortunately not. But that's the thing, because you talk to businesses, for example, in East Africa, you talk to CEOs, and the perception is you're showing up, you're telling me to give you 40% of my company for X amount of capital, you're going to take my baby away from me. Our ideas I like, and it's a thing that's been happening for years and years and years, and I keep coming back to the original question. How do we change that? Ronnie, we discussed this a little earlier, so let me start with your response to that.
Yeah, I think the first comment to make is it's not necessarily an Africa thing. I mean, it boils down to an entrepreneur who has built up a business for many, many years, considers it to be his or her baby, and so is very attached emotionally, not least, to it. And so it's all about what is the asymmetry between, I suppose, the promoter, stroke seller, and the buyer. Very often, clearly, value expectations will differ, and the mode and nature of intervention of a private equity firm, what it's allowed to do, what it's not allowed to do, will differ. And it's important to make that clear and agreed up front. I mean, picking on what Richard just said, we had long discussions with private equity, with DFIs before making that decision. Many people would say the exact opposite. DFIs take a long time to react, private equity, etc., etc. We have different experience. So it's important to take that time to make a right judgment in order to avoid problems in the future.
If I can just add on that, I completely share that view. I think to use an image that's been used so many times, so apologies for that, but admitting someone in your capital is like getting married. I mean, you go through the trial period, through the due diligence phase, then you have the wedding, then you have the honeymoon where everybody delivers on what they promised they would be delivering during the due diligence phase. And then you get into clashes and disputes, and then you got this maturity phase where you've learned to work with the other party. You understand how they work, and particularly you understand what you can expect from them. And I think private equity, just to make it work, is all about expectations. And just as Richard mentioned, I think the expectations on one particular company may very much differ from the company next door. You have the family-owned businesses, they don't want necessarily to get diluted. It's their baby, as we mentioned. They don't want to have pressure of finding an exit for their private equity partner 5 years down the line. But these companies may well turn to other sorts of finance like mezzanine funds, for example, which is one credible alternative, I guess. Then you have on the other side of the spectrum, people who want to sell their business, but they just don't know how to do an IPO, they don't know how to approach a strategic partner, they don't know how to maximize the value they can get out of the business. And so they would turn to a fund specializing in controlled situation, for example. Or people who actually are very clear about what they expect from a private equity fund. Help me go to another market, help me go regional, help me build another product line, etc. And they will turn to people like Peter and Albert, for example. So it's all about managing expectations, I guess.
Are there any questions from the floor that we'd like to address? Gentlemen in the front here, any mics are available?